Good evening. This is Bob McBride, Superintendent of Lockport Township High School District 205. And if you are online for our online conversation about the Lockport District 205 Central Campus Referendum, you are in the right place. Just letting you know you've landed here. We're going to run a few videos before we begin, roughly at about 7 o'clock. So just letting you know you're here and, here are just a few videos to warm you up to the conversation about the campus itself.
What is the referendum? Shall the Board of Education of Lockport Township High School District Number 205, Will County, Illinois, alter, repair, renovate, equip, and improve the site of Lockport Township High School Central Campus, including preserving and protecting the exterior of the building, Veterans Foyer, and the main gym, replacing and improving HVAC and major mechanical systems, renovating and updating instructional areas and classrooms, and improving accessibility to comply with the Americans with Disability Act, and issuing bonds of said school district to the amount of $85 million for the purpose of paying the cost thereof. The referendum is not asking to build a new school. The referendum is asking to renovate and repair the school we have.
Good evening. Hey, once again, Dr. Bob McBride, Superintendent of Lockport Township High School District 205. If you are here just to listen in to and participate in tonight's online conversation, you're in the right place. We're going to roll one more video, and then we're going to get started when everybody's had a chance to join. So enjoy this about 7-minute video. Thank you.
My name is Rich Kosick. I'm a class of 2005 graduate from Lockport, and I now work at DLA Architects. To come back and work on my own school, it's really fun and exciting. It's nostalgic, especially coming back through here, because it does look very similar. It's almost, I'm coming up on the 20-year reunion, so it looks very similar to how I remember it. There's plenty of infrastructure things if you consider windows and doors, ADA accessibility, HVAC. That's, I know, a big one, just having proper air conditioning and ventilation. And the older systems are less efficient, take up a lot of space. The newer ones are much more compact and more efficient. A couple things to consider. Older buildings, typically, they didn't insulate the exterior walls. They were just brick and mortar and no insulation. Also, the glass being single pane in some instances without a thermal break inside the glass. Certainly the new ones have much better performance. The glass, as well as the frame, the window frames themselves, are now have thermal breaks in them, which stop the transfer of warm or cold air inside to outside. So just kind of the whole system as a whole, even the seals around the windows after however old, 50, 100 years, that, you know, the seal around them may not be perfectly weather tight as well. So kind of the whole package. And actually if you can see, those are kind of blocked out. So there's even opportunity to get more natural light. Kind of the openings, I'd assume we just replace the windows in kind for the most part. So that would potentially give access to more natural light. Probably over the years it's gotten covered up because it got hot in here because of the window itself. But maybe now with new improved windows and new shading, might be able to get some more light into some of these spaces too. So that certainly helps. The envelope is very important for that energy efficiency. Boilers are generally pretty efficient in that regard. They're heating up water and moving it around. But in terms of cooling, there really isn't any kind of centralized air system. So that certainly makes it hard with just univents or window ACs, which, as you've probably heard, create condensation, things like that. So without a proper system kind of filtering that in and out, air in and out, and controlling the moisture and any kind of condensation that might come from that. So just kind of the whole system as a whole will just improve everything, really. Certainly we got to figure out what system makes the most sense for the building. We don't know exactly what we're dealing with, or the budget we might have to work with. All these systems come with different costs as well. You know, the price of a unit versus how much copper you got to run. Copper is a big part of that, the cost of copper. So long runs of copper might increase those costs. When we had all our meetings with students and staff, they need outlets. Obviously, every kid with one-to-one devices and Chromebooks and all that, and phones and iPads, they all need power everywhere. And with this being such an old building, there's limited access to those outlets. So getting as many outlets as possible everywhere is certainly an update much needed. The main thing I know with the bathrooms is they're just small, they're not ADA. So, you know, at least conceptually looking at opening those up. So, you know, creating as much space for those, making them ADA. Certainly an issue is getting larger bathrooms and more inaccessible. Some of the classrooms, you know, it could be as simple as a facelift, flooring, ceiling, paint, getting some vibrant, exciting colors. You know, so it starts with just a basic facelift of the classrooms. One of the issues in the building is some of the classrooms are really small. They're down to 400 or 500 square feet. Typically we'd see 800, 850 to 900 for a typical classroom. Some of those are really compact, which just doesn't give much room for movement, flexibility, things like that. A lot of the flooring, instead of the old VCT with wax, we look at VCT or linoleum, things like that that are no wax products that don't require the yearly stripping and waxing and maintenance. So, and they're a little bit softer, more vibrant colors, so there's more fun options with that. So, you know, some of those new flooring options. The walls, I mean, typically we like to do drywall when possible if it makes it feel more homey, as opposed to cinder block walls or CMU masonry walls inside. So, you know, bringing in some warmth to make it feel more homey, and certainly the color that comes with that. Otherwise, you know, we like to introduce wood whenever we can, or wood look products, sometimes for ceilings. We know there's already a lot of wood features in the building, so I think finding a modern way to complement that. Each project is just so dependent on the kind of the existing character of what we're doing. So in a building like this where there's already a historic nature kind of set up, we'd want to find a way to kind of marry that between modern and historic. We work with a lot of schools. It's very rare do we put anything too extravagant. It's mostly about function and maintenance. We're always thinking about long-term maintenance, you know, for the maintenance staff. Like I said, without stripping and waxing, things like that. So durability and economical is always at the forefront, for sure. Some other things that are certainly lacking are collaboration spaces. There's really minimal either student collaboration or meetings when students meet with teachers, things like that, for students to break out in small groups. So things like that. 21st century education is typically what we refer to that as, but it's kind of learning outside of a typical classroom. So those spaces, especially, getting some of that. There's one elevator in the building now. We want to look at, is there another spot or two spots where an elevator makes more sense? We'd certainly look at ramps. The goal would be to have an ADA flat access on each floor, ultimately, so that no one had to go all the way around the building to get to an elevator. We've certainly done this many times at other projects. It's a puzzle that we got to solve as well, but certainly the technology part is the most challenging. Without electrical and data run through the building, the district's probably done that all themselves over the years, in-house, just getting running cable and Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff around the building. But sometimes those old thick walls make it hard for wireless to get through, so you need more access points, things like that. With better windows, proper HVAC control, all those systems just being more efficient, a new roof with better insulation, things like that. That's all going to just help the envelope of the building and the energy consumption of the building. LED lighting as well. So all those little things will lower the long-term operating costs of the building. It certainly needs its updates to keep it feasible for another 50, 100 years. But it's awesome to come back. Still trying to find a picture of myself on the wall, but I haven't found one yet.
Hey, good evening. I am Bob McBride, Superintendent of Lockport Township High School District 205. And thank you so much for joining us this evening for our final pre-March 19th Central Campus Referendum online discussion. Before we dive into anything, I want to thank you for being with us this evening and devoting your time to this conversation. And I do want to stress that we want to make it a conversation. Your involvement is so important. So let's kind of find out who's in the room here to help you out. I'll be answering, many of the questions that you pose. If you're looking at your YouTube screen right now, you'll see that there's a chat box where you can pose questions. Over to my left is just a group of our administrators, Lori Cristofero, Angela Adolph, John Greenan, Angela Huntington, and Janine Wheeler, who will be reading the scroll and doing their best job to answer your questions and pose your questions. I'll be talking for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for your questions. So thanks so much for taking a look at who's in the room. It's a formal presentation, but it's not so formal that we don't want to connect with you and certainly want your questions to be at the forefront. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we are really going to dive into the building itself. Our first online discussion talked about the overview. How did we get here? What brought us to this point that we were proposing to you, our Board of Education was proposing to you as voters, a Central Campus full renovation. Last time we did an online conversation, we just talked about making sense of the dollars. We brought in our Chief School Business Official, Stephanie Croy, really to dig deep into taxation and bonds and funding something like a referendum. Tonight, our desire is to really dig into the building itself and help you understand why we're proposing a renovation, whether you took a tour with the 800 other community members who have done that in the past year, or you haven't had a chance to do it. We hope to take you there, literally. I'm really just the person who is talking to you this evening, but I represent so many people who over the past 4 years have been a part of this process in terms of focusing on this historic building. We could even go further back, well over 100 years ago, where our 65 square mile area was just a collection of one-room schoolhouses. And at some point in the late 1800s, our community decided those one-room schoolhouses weren't serving its children. So they consolidated a K through 12 school, central school, where Lockport City Hall is. Then in 1909, citizens said we needed to serve high school students, particularly at Lockport Central, and began the building of that building. And in 1909, part of the building was built. 1929, 1930, and 1958, citizens said we needed to expand that building into what we call Central Campus right now. In a shorter amount of history, 4 years ago, we had a structural engineering assessment done of Central Campus. It came back very strong in terms of the envelope of the building and the strength of the building, but also pointed out to us needs that we'll talk about tonight if the building is to be modern, to be current, and to stay open, which is highlighted by our present predicament of the ceiling collapse that everyone knows about in November. Structures that age need to be replaced, and oftentimes those costs are very, very high. If you're a homeowner, you likely understand that if you've had to buy a new home and mortgage that, or you've had to get a home equity loan to renovate your home. So tonight, we'll really dig into the building itself. But also in the nearer future, we had a Citizens Advisory Council that involved architects from different firms, construction managers, administrators from our feeder schools, all talking about Central. And that committee made a recommendation to our school board that we should renovate Central. And if we do renovate Central, we should propose a full renovation. Our board embraced that, and over the past year, we've had people in the building, we've had workshops, we've had conversations. We've worked with DLA architects who are architects that have been with our district for quite some time. I think their worth, at least in my experience, comes from their absolute knowledge of our buildings. And I just couldn't imagine removing that institutional knowledge of all of our buildings at a time when we need that institutional knowledge now more than ever. Also, all the projects I've worked at with DLA, not as big as this proposed renovation, have all come in under budget. So a year's worth of conversation, a demographic study to understand the future of our students. So I stand here before you speaking to you, but I represent our school board and so many people, professional opinions to citizens' opinions, that have been in on this conversation. So let's jump into the building. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the places for the building. So I'd like to start with you, the front of the building itself. Take a look at this view of Central. This is probably the most iconic and familiar view of Central that so many people see from Jefferson Street. It has that 1900s vintage that you don't see in school buildings very much anymore because so many have been demolished and replaced by new construction. It's got that vintage appeal. But as you think about tonight's presentation and you ask your questions, I would point out some things that certainly make this an attractive building, but also call us to renovate and preserve it. If you take a look at its masonry front and its cornices, all of those certainly need to be tuck pointed, maintained, cleaned, brightened. If you take a look at the windows, many of those windows are dated. They don't have the kind of protection of HVAC and cooling and heating and barrier that are proper in order to maintain temperature inside of the building. You look and you see in the window air conditioning units, which are great to cool a classroom, but also cause a tremendous amount of condensation in the building, which we've identified as a major issue. And then if you look at that iconic front entrance, it does seem warm and inviting, but I would argue that if you were a person who was wheelchair bound, you would not find it warm and inviting because you couldn't enter that entrance and access the building. It's not ADA compliant. The building isn't required right now to be fully ADA compliant, but one of the aspirations of this Central Campus referendum is to make the building fully compliant. First and foremost, infrastructure. Let's go to the roof. This, more than anything else, is an effort to take a look at the infrastructure of the building, the core fundamental things that give the building integrity. We know the envelope of the building has structural integrity, but major systems, expensive systems, need a review, need replacement, and the roof is one of those. This first shot just kind of shows you the roof and some of its amenities, but we've also been upkeeping this roof since 1980. It has not been completely replaced since then. We have been repairing and restoring sections of roof over many years. Forensic architects, WJE, when they came in and they did ceiling analysis, they expected actually to see in our third floor ceilings leaks that would be common in a building this age. They didn't. They were very surprised that they only found one leak, which was a historic leak. I think that has, and they think that that has much to do with our constant renovation, repair, upkeep of that roof. But with a roof that is 1980, almost 50 plus years old, it is time for that very, very important element to be removed and a new roof. Kind of moving into the building, a component that works with the building are windows. Windows are so critical to the efficiency of a building. In this shot, you can see that the window is original. You can see the kind of cracking. It's a single pane window. So it doesn't have the kind of barrier that you would need to keep the cold out and the hot out and keep the temperature constant inside of the building. We would really be arguing in this renovation to replace all of the windows. This picture, which has an in-the-wall unit and original windows, shows you a combination that we believe renovation really needs to address in terms of infrastructure. Those in-the-wall units, they produce a tremendous amount of condensation. Windows that are single pane don't keep, as I said, the hot and the cold out. That creates a situation in classrooms where we can't control the climate. And that's not just for creature comfort and for having a place where you've got air conditioning in the warm months. It really is to help preserve the building, and in a masonry building, make sure that all systems are going to not have the kind of moisture that can be so corrosive. We have these huge boilers, 70-year-old boilers. Boilers are actually an efficient heating element, but what makes it very difficult is we don't have a modern way of spreading that steam heat throughout the entire building. So that steam heat goes throughout the building, and even when these boilers are at full strength, sometimes you have hot, sometimes you have cold in the building. That doesn't create that climate control. Also, these boilers, because they are so old and the company that originally foundried them no longer exists. So in terms of maintenance, we have to actually send out for specialty manufacturer, any kind of part, any kind of valve, any kind of tube that comes up. There are right now hot, cold water systems that are modern, that are efficient, that are smaller, that require less maintenance, do a bit better and a more even job throughout a building of spreading heating and cooling. So you can see a couple of these boiler shots just to give an idea of what they look like. You're probably tired of me talking about air conditioning units, but I can't stress them enough. I don't know about you, but I did not go to an air-conditioned building when I was in high school. It was hot. It was a building that was built in 1873, and I was uncomfortable most of August and September. And certainly that is a feature. We want students, when they come into a building, to be comfortable. But as I've mentioned before, without proper climate control in Central, it is going to have a pervasive, and we've been told by forensic architects and structural engineers, that it's eventually going to cause decay and trouble with masonry systems and other systems like the ceiling that collapsed in room 310. You see many of these units, a univent and an air conditioner, bulky mechanics in our classrooms. These can be replaced by more efficient mechanicals that use less energy, produce better heating and cooling, and also don't take up as much classroom space. I want to transition from that to just Americans with Disability. And I'm showing you a picture of a bathroom for really two reasons. One, accessibility, and safety. Imagine you're coming into this bathroom and you're wheelchair bound. I'd like you just to take a look at how narrow that opening is and how difficult it would be for you to navigate, even just to get into a stall. But also safety. In our bathrooms, we have to have safety. We have to make sure that they're places with good sight lines, that they're not places that students are going to do things we wish that they would not do. We can't have them cramped. And one of the major life safety and Americans with Disability areas is making all of the washrooms in Central Campus accessible, safe, and even pleasant as a space to be in. This gives you, the next picture gives you a little bit of idea of the sort of archaic tiling, radiator heating, the types of spaces that are difficult to navigate both from an ADA perspective and just from the perspective of a usable, functional, modern bathroom. Another part of the major infrastructure that we would have to do that might just go unnoticed if you're a person who is fully ambulatory, you could probably walk Central Campus without a problem. These ramps that connect some of the older sections of the building to the 1950s section of the building, they're challenging. If you were on crutches, you had a torn ACL, you were an elderly person in a walker, you were a student who was in a wheelchair, these ramps would be very difficult both going up and going down. So part of the major infrastructure is to try to find solutions to these ramps so that they're accessible to people who might have that accessibility issue. Elevator. We only have one elevator. This elevator is as old as the 1950 section. You can see how narrow the doors are. In this renovation, our hope is that we could have two elevators. This one on the south side of the building, near door 15, which we would propose as our future accessible and safe main entrance for everyone. Have the entrance on Jefferson Street be a ceremonial entrance, the entrance on door 15 be an everyday bus, student, safe, secure vestibule entrance. But also having a brand new elevator installed here, and we also hope we could do an elevator on the north side of the building to create that Americans with Disability access. This picture, you might say, Americans with Disability Act, this is electrical. Well, this is one of our biology labs. You'll notice all the electricity is on the floor, and there is an issue with electricity throughout the building. We have cloth encased wiring throughout the building from the 1950s that has to be upgraded, as well as all of the components that serve that cloth wiring. But from an Americans with Disability Act point of view, imagine if you were wheelchair bound trying to navigate a room with flooring like this. It creates another impediment to entering the space and feeling comfortable and fully enfranchised in it. So I wanted to show you this just to illustrate electricity and to illustrate what is necessary in just classrooms to make them more accessible. We also have Americans with Disability Act to make sure doorways are open, to make sure that countertops and spacing and staging of rooms create access. So just a reminder that so much of this Central Campus referendum proposal is infrastructure: roof, windows, HVAC, electricity, and Americans with Disability Act. First and foremost, this referendum would have to address all those major components. I want to take a moment just to transition with you to major renovation and talk just a little bit before we go into some of the building spaces with major renovation, to talk about the east side of the building. When Central opened, Central was intended to be a comprehensive 9 through 12 high school. There wasn't an East Campus, even when Central was completely finished in the 1950s. As a result, Central had a pool. It had a gymnasium that on the gym floor level, it had physical education locker rooms, but below the gym, it had a whole world of the pool and athletic locker rooms. It had a huge auditorium that at the time in the 1950s was state of the art. Many of these spots have now fallen into disuse. They no longer match the uses that we have. Or, for example, a very large maintenance area right now, it used to be an auto shop. That auto shop has moved over to East Campus. I want to go through a couple areas, major renovation, that we could repurpose some of these areas in order to give them a second life, to bring students into them, to create proper spaces for programs that are growing and that are important. So let's take a look at our pool. You might say, what can we do with a pool? This pool it actually is very expensive to run, and we only have students, freshman students, in it every once in a while. We're proposing that we repurpose this for one of our two programs. We have two programs, the Lockport Academy and the CCC. The Lockport Academy is for our students who have social and emotional issues and need an alternative school. We keep them here in our district rather than sending them to some private location. Then we also have the CCC. This is for our students who are 18 to 23. They stay with us, and we provide them training in terms of vocations and independent living. This space is a very, very large space that we could completely renovate and completely repurpose to host either the academy or to host the CCC. And it has a proper Americans with Disability accessible entrance right off of Madison Street. So it would give those learners the feeling that they're entering an alternative school or they're entering a career academy. Also, athletic locker rooms. This athletic locker room hasn't been used in years. It was designed for teams coming, competing in varsity sports, changing, competing in the main gym. That happens at East Campus now. And we would propose this large square footage being repurposed in order either to be the CCC or the Lockport Academy. Similarly, our wrestling room, it's hosted the junior porters and some freshman wrestlers. It's got 2 dehumidifiers in it to kind of keep its temperature going. But this is a very large square footage area underneath the main gym, right adjacent to that locker room that you just saw, that could be reclaimed as a larger, more proper space for these 2 programs that are so important to those learners and really important to our district and hosted at Central. The auditorium has been a conversation throughout our entire journey. At first, we had many people who were suggesting the auditorium and the cafeteria could be partnered to create something that people have asked for in all of our focus groups, which are some larger spaces, some more open spaces like a student center. There was initially a proposal to demolish this auditorium completely, demolish the cafeteria, and create sort of a great atrium. Our Board of Education felt that that was too expensive, that was too costly, and it kind of went beyond our mission to, 1, focus on infrastructure, 2, focus on repurposing spaces. So what I'd ask you to do is just to imagine this space. Right now it's not used, and the reason why the auditorium isn't used is because we have a far more modern auditorium at East Campus that our theater program prefers, our band and choir program prefers, our performances like orchestras prefer, and people who rent our facilities prefer because there's ample parking right there. If you could use your imagination with this space, imagine if the stage was turned into a multi-purpose room, a room that could be used by PE, a room that could be used as a meeting space, a room that could be used as a black box theater for small dramatic productions. Now, imagine when you look at this picture, if you created a multi-purpose space in this auditorium. You preserved some of the seating on the lower level so that you still had a presentation space, but up above in the balcony, you created a library to move our port library over to this space so you would have mixed use. The idea would be to get people and get students and get citizens back in these spaces with some more modern and contemporary uses while preserving the superstructure of a place like this. I want to take just a second. Those are some of the major areas, and there are a few other major areas that we feel that we can reclaim. Maintenance area that used to be auto shop. Right now, our maintenance staff just puts desks in there and materials and equipment they use, but that could be repurposed, a very large space, for a proper fitness center that would be accessible to our PE students. It would also be accessible to the community after hours, much like the CWC over here at East Campus. Also, we have made a huge investment in construction trades, in Project Lead the Way, architecture and engineering. Part of that east side of the building, we could imagine there are some spaces that we could use to have a more proper setting, a larger setting for our construction trades and our pre-engineering classes as well. That's all part of that idea of major renovation. So let's dive into classroom remodeling, because really the third part of this program is remodeling classrooms so that they're modernized, they're appealing, and that they can support the type of learning we do here in 2023 and beyond. I'm showing you this classroom picture, and you might say, looks great to me. But one of the things I would have you notice is just look around the baseboard. There's no electricity. This room has one outlet. And in modern situations, we have Chromebooks. Students need to charge those Chromebooks. We use so much technology. And this room could just use simply that fix of more outlets. This room is our band room. One of the things you still see throughout the building. This is from the 1950s, this linoleum flooring. It's fairly dated, it's fairly browned, and it's warped, it's rippled. That's not just the light that you are seeing. This could be replaced by something that's durable, easy to care for, luxury vinyl composite tiling that not only is low maintenance and durable, but it also gives a really pleasant appeal to the room and makes it a more pleasant space. As a matter of fact, that product is often used in homes today. This classroom, I'd ask you just to simply use your imagination if the flooring was changed, if there were some windows that were opened up, if some of those major mechanicals were no longer necessary because there were new, more efficient mechanicals, if there was some painting and some new ceiling tiles, and if when the furniture came back in, it was properly staged furniture to give the room more room and also give a chance for collaborative learning. This classroom, this is science classroom. Again, imagine windows, floors, paint, new ceiling tiles, and brand new furniture and fixtures that are more modern, more supportive of lab work. Americans with Disability Act in mind to navigate the room as well. This is our cafeteria. Again, we abandoned the idea of demolishing the cafeteria, but we still believe that the cafeteria could use a facelift. It could use a new floor. It could use some new painting. It could use some decorative treatments of those columns, those support columns that hold up the auditorium. It could use some work on its windows, all brand new windows to let more light in, especially on that stairway in the back that you might see. But it also could use a new kitchen. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. You can probably see from this picture very, very old appliances in that kitchen. Simple replacement of these appliances and updating this entire space could go a long way in terms of the food service that we provide for our students. So, classroom remodeling, many of those things relate to floors, they relate to paint, they relate to ceiling tiles, they relate to space, they relate to furniture and fixtures. Most of our classrooms don't need the major renovation that I mentioned when I talked about the pool or I talked about areas like underneath the main gym or the auditorium. I want to just also pause here to talk about preservation. There are many spaces at Central Campus that are near and dear to the hearts of the community, that have memories that important things happen, and they really share the pride and history of our community. In preservation, we would not change these. We might enhance them a little bit, improve some cases, maybe change some electricity. In the Veterans Foyer, a number of people have said, can we get rid of those fluorescent lights? We might look at that. This hallway is where we have kept, this is a hallway in Central, we've kept all of our trophies. There's history of championship and state championship teams. This is the kind of hallway that we would keep intact. You can even see we've done a little bit of a flooring improvement. The Veterans Foyer, we would really keep the integrity of this room that commemorates the accomplishments, the sacrifice, the loss of our veterans that have served our armed forces. One of my favorite pieces in the Veterans Foyer is this piece that was installed in 1930, and it says, "The World War." It doesn't say World War I. It doesn't imagine World War II. It just says, "The World War." And this is a space that acknowledges those Lockport women and men who went off and served our armed forces. Also, what we call the Port now, or the library. It's a unique space. It's a space at the top of a sort of cylindrical structure built in the 1950s. At the very top, it's got a main area, which in many ways has served as our student center, and then it has these unique lofts, which we would have to make more accessible for sure. It has memories, and it's just unique. There's really nothing like it that I have seen in my 36 years of being involved in public education. And then, of course, the main gym, a pit gym. There's only a couple of them left in Illinois and a handful left across the country. We would preserve this, make it ADA accessible, improve the railings, improve the ceiling tiles, add those components, but keep the essential character of this iconic gym where the 1978 state championship team played. I want to take a moment as we get ready for your questions for you to use your imagination just a little bit. Imagine infrastructure improvements, significant renovation, classroom remodeling, and preservation. If you put all of that together, that could equal an academic situation in Central Campus for students from 7 feeder districts, private schools, where they all come and start that high school journey. I don't know about you. High school for me was only 4 years of my life. It is smaller and smaller part of my life every year that I get older. But it was huge. It was an important part of my life. And one of the things that this referendum is asking is, could we create a situation for those 7 feeder districts, for those freshmen to come together and start their journey into high school in a proper, sound building that has 40 to 50 more years and is appealing and aligns with contemporary instruction. I want to just go through a few pictures. This is one of our computer labs, some students in one of our current classrooms doing some work, students in a current lab, asking you to imagine these same students, or maybe even imagine a kindergartner today coming to high school, and how could this space be different? In a foods lab, crowded, could be bigger, could be more expansive. Collaborative situation in a lab. We put our students oftentimes together. How could we restage rooms to even better support that kind of collaboration? And that kind of brings us all the way back to the building itself. This referendum is really founded on the input of so many, and it's also founded on a few principles that our Board of Education has put together. The first principle is you, the voter. Our board, after really studying Central Campus for 2 years, felt that you need to make the decision about the scope of its renovation. They have taken a recommendation from a committee to fully renovate this building, that time and time again, report and report again, tells us this building that you're looking at has a sound structure, a sound superstructure, sound envelope. It's the school we have. So the first principle is preservation of a historic building that's been a vessel of memory for over 114 years. The second principle is renovation. Our board has selected something for you to decide that is less costly than new construction. We know that 6 times new construction failed. This offering is something that would benefit every student. It would modernize a building and give it new life, and it would be less expensive than new construction. And then finally, unity. Every single porter coming to Lockport Township High School District 205 would have the benefit of this space. And we would not have the kind of disunity that sometimes comes when a new building is in one attendance area, one neighborhood, not in another neighborhood. Everyone would benefit from a renovation of Lockport Township Central Campus. Thanks so much for being attentive and listening. It's time for your questions, so let's get into those questions. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Christopher, and we're going to start answering them.
Dr. McBride, one of the questions in the chat is, will Central, and East too, be able to handle anticipated enrollments if the referendum passes?
That's a great question. In one of the first things we did in 2022, we did what's called a demographic projection. Now, the demographer that we selected looks specifically at housing and housing trends and housing sales and housing turnover in our area, and uses that to project out to 2032. We also use something called cohort regression, and we do that on our own. Both studies, the demographic projection and the cohort regression, indicate that we're going to dip just a little bit in the next few years, but by 2027, we're going to head back up to about 4,200 students. So we do believe the capacity of both buildings can handle what we anticipate would be our projected enrollment over the next 10 years. We've done that work. So far, 2 years into both of those models, we are right on what was predicted.
Okay, so we have a person online that's trying to understand how we arrived at the budget. More specifically, the person is concerned that without a comprehensive breakdown of each phase, the cost estimates might be hard to gauge. So can you talk about how we maybe arrived at the $85 million and how that works?
You bet. The main way that we arrived through that is a cost opinion from a number of different sources, primarily from our architects. Have experience with cost opinions in our district, have an intimate knowledge of Central Campus, work throughout the Chicagoland area on school renovation and school construction, understand materials that are necessary, ordering timeline, understand labor involved, legal fees, contingency fees. Adding all of that together, we got cost opinions on all of the things that you just saw this evening. What would major infrastructure cost? What would large, significant remodeling cost? What would general classroom remodeling cost? So taking all of that knowledge. We also vetted that through construction companies. All along, we've talked to construction companies that we, if our referendum passes, that we would eventually have to interview for a construction manager. We would have to hire a construction manager. And we've asked, are we on point? Is this the going rate for renovation? And we've constantly had a good pricing return. What we didn't do is we did not order architectural plans, and I want to tell you a little bit why. In our district office, we have architectural plans, which are very expensive, from 6 failed referendums. As a board, we made a decision that we would not order architectural plans until we fully understood what the community was approving or disapproving. So we've done that cost opinion work, but suffice to say, one interesting thing about renovation is a different strategy than new construction. When you go with new construction, you commit to that building. You have to build that building. Most school districts right now that have committed to new construction, they're finding that the cost of that building that they estimated 2 years ago has significantly increased. They've got to find a way to meet the cost because they've committed to that new building. Renovation allows you to take a concept, translate it into architectural plans, but stay within the limits that the voters set. If the referendum passes, you've set an $85 million limit. We can stage that so we can deal with the major infrastructure and Americans with Disability Act, move on to the major renovation and remodeling, move on to the general classroom remodeling. So that is how we've thought through the $85 million bond referendum that we've come to. Dr. Greenham.
Dr. McBride, where will students be taught if the referendum does pass? So if you can talk about the planned phase process.
That is a great question. As we start our initial conversations, just to get to know construction companies, and there are quite a few that are interested in this project. Their interest and their desire to get involved really tells me that they believe that it's a solid project, that it's a project worth doing. But one question we ask each one of them is their experience with renovation while students are present. Some of the answers that we've received is that in the summer, that's when most of the very difficult work would be done. HVAC, roofing, windows, that type of work, electrical. During the school year, we would have to do some staging. The plan has always been to be renovating while school is in session. So we are looking at moving throughout the building. First, renovating sections of the building, like below the main gym, that are far away from many of the instructional areas and sort of insulated by the main gym. Eventually, we would have to move into biology classrooms, math classrooms. We would have to stage it so students might be taking class in the port. They might be taking class in the auditorium. They might be taking class in the cafeteria in a temporary way. And of course, we would work with construction managers and companies to mediate the hassle and the inconvenience that sometimes brings. But students would be at Central the entire time, starting, we hope, in August 2024, as our ceiling project is far underway now, and we believe will come to completion in certainly before August 2024.
All right, Dr. McBride, there is a question about the maintenance of the building. Specifically, there are some numbers out there about what the cost of maintenance is, and could you speak to the potential reduction of maintenance costs with this renovation?
That's a great question. There's been a lot floating out, a lot of comparison of East Campus and Central Campus. I usually highlight when I'm talking to folks that East Campus is well over 500,000 square feet. It hosts almost all of our major programs. It has its own 10-year rotation of renovation and maintenance that needs to happen. In particular, related to Lockport Central, we have over the past about decade been putting about $500,000 to $1 million a year into the building to repair the roof, to improve the boiler systems, to address steam pipes, to redo flooring, to remove hard asbestos. A robust program, but that robust program is not the program that would allow us to change these major systems. With these major systems, you would see less time spent on flooring, less time spent repairing roofs, less time on heating and cooling and the type of maintenance that has to go in, more energy efficiency, more energy savings, but also something that I think is priceless in the maintenance and operations realm, and that's peace of mind. We've heard it over and over again. I can't tell you how many, first and foremost, from our forensic architects and structural engineers who analyze the situation currently at Central, but we've heard it over and over again from other structural engineers, construction companies. No one could have predicted that that ceiling system in room 210 would fail. And the peace of mind knowing that you have our building, it's fully functional, its major systems have been renovated, that creates an incredible peace of mind in terms of maintenance and operations for the building. Dr. Cristofero.
Well, I have a question for you.
Dr. Huntington.
One of the responders asked about buildings are eligible for National Registry of Historic Buildings, which Central would be eligible for. Can get an exemption for ADA compliance. Has this been considered?
It has been considered. We work with the city of Lockport. The truth of the matter is because we have a large section of that building is from the 1950s, it doesn't qualify for National Register of Historic Places. Perhaps the Veterans Foyer, maybe the gym. Also, a lot of the tax credits that come with historic buildings, we're not eligible for those tax credits as a public institution. Those tax credits are for private institutions. Also, one of the difficulties is we've spent some time working with the state of Illinois on the school construction grant. That was ended in 2003. It was the most significant thing that the state was doing to give taxpayer relief on major construction projects. If you had a proposal that was accepted by the school construction board, you ended up on the list. You moved up on the list as different schools received funding. We came, along with Taft Elementary School District, to the top of the list in the very year 2003 that it was discontinued. What that would have meant is that our programs, new construction or this renovation, would have qualified for a 35% kick-in by the state. The state would have picked up 35% of the cost. We have partnered with Taft Elementary School District. We are working, lobbying, writing to Springfield, talking to the state superintendent to have that state school construction grant restarted. Unfortunately, it's been on taxpayers like yourself throughout Illinois to fund the well-being and the upkeep of their buildings. And we're at a point where we don't believe, at least right now, that school construction grant is going to start up in the time that we need it. So many efforts, quite a bit of research done, but that has also been part of what we've done, to come to this moment.
How long is the renovation expected to take?
That is a great question. How long is the renovation expected to take? We are planning 5 years. We want to be astute about it. We want to have a climate where students can go to school. We want to have a climate in the neighborhood that is not significantly disruptive. But in our initial conversations with construction companies, some companies are saying they think they can do that in 2 years, in 3 years. Obviously, we would want to do that in a shorter amount of time than 5 years. So right now, our best guess, depending on the type of funding that's available, and obviously that's your decision, could be a 2 to 5 year project. Really trying to do it in about 2 to 3 years would be ideal. Mrs. Adolph.
We're actually kind of rolled through most of our questions. There is one question that I'm not quite sure how you'd like to address, but it says, where can I get a yard sign to support the referendum? Well, I know that's.
Well, somebody asked, I do want to address that. Where can I get a yard sign to support the referendum? I do have to just share something, maybe just in public interest, because oftentimes people have said, at times confuse the referendum committee and the district. We are not the yard sign people, and because we can give you this information this evening, we can share information, tell you what the board has proposed to you, but we ultimately can't tell you how we think you should vote. So we're not able to supply you with a yard sign. What I would recommend, if you're interested in that, I believe there's a Facebook page and a couple of Facebook pages. I would try to use Facebook or just, go online, LTHS referendum. You might be able to find the referendum page. We're here to provide you information, so I'm sorry I can't provide you with a yard sign. Also, we've made some of the district videos, which you've seen tonight, but other videos, other materials, other signs out there, just a group of citizens who have come together, and they're in support. And there are citizens that are not in support, and that's the nature, of democracy. And that's exactly why our Board of Education wanted to propose it to you, the voters in the community, you to make up the minds of where the district is going with Central before they make decisions on your behalf. My team is saying that is the end of the questions.
The only thing I could ask you to reference, Dr. McBride, is to talk about all the variety of information that's on the website that people can go to, because we directed some people there.
Great. What I would do is we've tried to make our website as easy and as accessible as possible for you. www.lths.org. You will land on our landing page, and if you look to your right, you'll see 3 tabs. There's 2 in particular that I would highlight to you. One, Central Campus updates. We have posted everything you need to know about Central on that website. We've posted everything from past inspections, structural engineering reports, if you have the time to delve into those type of things. All things Central are on that page, so you can really take a look at what you're looking for. Another tab is the referendum page. The referendum page has a number of different important components to it. It has a tax calculator. If you just take a recent tax bill, maybe something you got from September or last May, you can look at the fair market value. It's right there on your tax bill. You can type that fair market value in. Be sure to note if you have any kind of exemptions. Most homeowners have the homestead exemption. Seniors have their exemptions. Disabled veterans have exemptions as well. And that tax calculator will tell you exactly the cost for your home, your piece of property, not for your neighbors or an average. We just think personalizing it to you is important. It'll also give you our frequently asked questions, and that's probably the document that I would tell most community members to go to, that frequently asked questions. If it's been asked in this whole journey that we've taken, the answer is there, and I think it's a very, very useful document. Also on that page is the analysis that we've done of past referenda. The 6 past referenda issues from 2006 to 2011, what the district was asking for new construction at the property we own in Homer Glen, and the cost that was being asked. We have asked our architects to price out 2 models in those years. A freshman-only building, which they've priced out using the architectural plans that they proposed then. They've priced out at $145 million. Then a brand-new 9 through 12 high school, 471,000 square feet, they priced that out beginning at about $180 million. That tax burden our board just feels is not something that taxpayers could support given the tax burden on our 34,200 households. So I really would consult those. Also, you can see on our websites the videos that we put together to try to be as informative and to tell a story with pictures as well. Well, I absolutely appreciate you being here. One of the things that I would say, and I hope you can take us up on this and share this. We're in this age of technology. I certainly understand that. Email, texting, constantly distracted by our cell phones, social media. And whenever we're thinking about a community, I think it's a good time to come back to just some old-fashioned values of sitting down, folks sitting down and talking through things, person to person. Even if in the end, we disagree. We agree to disagree. We at least know more, and we've really been thorough. Our offices in the next week, and always really, are open to you. You email me, I'll gather board members, a couple board members together, not violate the Open Meetings Act, get our architects, we'll sit down with you. We value your time. Our email's open, our phones are open. All of that is right on our website so you can contact any of us. My job, if you reach out to me, is either to get you an answer or get you to the right people who can answer these important questions. And my appeal to the community is to take us up on that. We are happy to work with you really at any time. Thank you so much for listening to this. We're going to leave out on, if you didn't see it at the beginning, it's a video where one of our DLA architects, who also happens to be a Lockport Township High School District 205 alum, talks about his vision of what is possible for Central. I appreciate so much you giving time. You can't get that time back. Thank you for being in it with us. And more than anything else, thank you for being involved in a democratic process to reaffirm for all of us that this is how we decide things. We appreciate the opportunity on behalf of our board to ask you what your opinion is, and where would you like to take our school district next? Our board has affirmed that you should be the first to decide the direction, and I hope you embrace that. And the most important thing, no matter how you vote, is please vote on March 19th. Thanks so much. We're going to go out on this video and have a great evening.
My name is Rich Kosek. I'm a class of 2005 graduate from Lockport, and I now work at DLA Architects. To come back and work on my own school, it's really fun and exciting. It's nostalgic, especially coming back through here, because it does look very similar. It's almost, I'm coming up on the 20-year reunion, so it looks very similar to how I remember it. There's plenty of infrastructure things if you consider windows and doors, ADA accessibility, HVAC. That's, I know, a big one, just having proper air conditioning and ventilation. And the older systems are less efficient, take up a lot of space. The newer ones are much more compact and more efficient. A couple things to consider. Older buildings, typically, they didn't insulate the exterior walls. They were just brick and mortar and no insulation. Also, the glass being single pane in some instances without a thermal break inside the glass. Certainly the new ones have much better performance. The glass, as well as the frame, the window frames themselves, now have thermal breaks in them, which stop the transfer of warm or cold air inside to outside. So just kind of the whole system as a whole, even the seals around the windows after however old, 50, 100 years, that, the seal around them may not be perfectly weather tight as well. So kind of the whole package. And actually if you can see, those are kind of blocked out. So there's even opportunity to get more natural light. Kind of the openings, I'd assume we just replace the windows in kind for the most part, so that would potentially give access to more natural light. Probably over the years it's gotten covered up because it got hot in here because of the window itself, but maybe now with new improved windows and new shading, might be able to get some more light into some of these spaces too. So that certainly helps. The envelope is very important for that energy efficiency. Boilers are generally pretty efficient in that regard. They're heating up water and moving it around. But in terms of cooling, there really isn't any kind of centralized air system. So that certainly makes it hard with just univents or window ACs, which, as you've probably heard, create condensation, things like that. So without a proper system kind of filtering that in and out, air in and out, and controlling the moisture and any kind of condensation that might come from that. So just kind of the whole system as a whole will just improve everything, really. Certainly we got to figure out what system makes the most sense for the building. We don't know exactly what we're dealing with, or the budget we might have to work with. All these systems come with different costs as well. The price of a unit versus how much copper you got to run. Copper is a big part of that, the cost of copper. So long runs of copper might increase those costs. When we had all our meetings with students and staff, they need outlets. Obviously, every kid with one-to-one devices and Chromebooks and all that, and phones and iPads, they all need power everywhere. And with this being such an old building, there's limited access to those outlets. So getting as many outlets as possible everywhere is certainly an update much needed. The main thing I know with the bathrooms is they're just small, they're not ADA. So, at least conceptually looking at opening those up. So, creating as much space for those, making them ADA. Certainly an issue is getting larger bathrooms and more inaccessible. Some of the classrooms, it could be as simple as a facelift, flooring, ceiling, paint, getting some vibrant, exciting colors. So it starts with just a basic facelift of the classrooms. One of the issues in the building is some of the classrooms are really small. They're down to 400 or 500 square feet. Typically we'd see 800, 850 to 900 for a typical classroom. Some of those are really compact, which just doesn't give much room for movement, flexibility, things like that. A lot of the flooring, instead of the old VCT with wax, we look at VCT or linoleum, things like that are no wax products that don't require the yearly stripping and waxing and maintenance. So, and they're a little bit softer, more vibrant colors, so there's more fun options with that. So, some of those new flooring options. The walls, typically we like to do drywall when possible if it makes it feel more homey as opposed to cinder block walls or CMU masonry walls inside. So, bringing in some warmth to make it feel more homey, and certainly the color that comes with that. Otherwise, we like to introduce wood whenever we can, or wood look products, sometimes for ceilings. We know there's already a lot of wood features in the building, so I think finding a modern way to complement that. Each project is just so dependent on the existing character of what we're doing. So in a building like this where there's already a historic nature kind of set up, we'd want to find a way to kind of marry that between modern and historic. We work with a lot of schools. It's very rare do we put anything too extravagant. It's mostly about function and maintenance. We're always thinking about long-term maintenance, for the maintenance staff. Like I said, without stripping and waxing, things like that. So durability and economical is always at the forefront, for sure. Some other things that are certainly lacking are collaboration spaces. There's really minimal either student collaboration or meetings when students meet with teachers, things like that, for students to break out in small groups. So things like that. 21st century education is typically what we refer to that as, but it's kind of learning outside of a typical classroom. So those spaces, especially, getting some of that. There's one elevator in the building now. We want to look at, is there another spot or two spots where an elevator makes more sense? We'd certainly look at ramps. The goal would be to have an ADA flat access on each floor, ultimately, so that no one had to go all the way around the building to get to an elevator. We've certainly done this many times at other projects. It's a puzzle that we got to solve as well, but certainly the technology part is the most challenging. Without electrical and data run through the building, the district's probably done that all themselves over the years, in-house, just running cable and Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff around the building. But sometimes those old thick walls make it hard for wireless to get through, so you need more access points, things like that. With better windows, proper HVAC control, all those systems just being more efficient, new roof with better insulation, things like that. That's all going to just help the envelope of the building and the energy consumption of the building. LED lighting as well. So all those little things will, lower the long-term operating costs of the building. It certainly needs its updates to keep it feasible for another 50, 100 years. But it's awesome to come back. Still trying to find a picture of myself on the wall, but I haven't found one yet.